Hello, everybody. I hope you're all well. I have decided to do a slightly different approach to CEO briefings and updates from previously in terms of coming out and doing those during meeting time in each academy. And that's partly due to the fact that we have so many sites now and schools in different areas that it's I think much more helpful for you to receive information all at the same time by way of update. So this video recording goes hand in hand with a PDF document and a printed document in terms of that reflect the update from the last couple of terms in a way that really hopefully is about keeping colleagues, all of you, connected with each other, the work that's going on across all of our schools and across the trust. Within the update that I've sent out, I hope that you can really see a core theme coming through that in relation to our mission statement and our values that we have as a trust. So our mission statement of together we build brighter futures for our young people with SEND is something that's so important to us. It's what binds us all together, and I am sure that everybody who works within a SEND really buys into and believes that that's a need and something that we can achieve together. On that, we're going to spend some time really in the autumn term in teams at school level and across teams really thinking about that mission statement, about the together and the building brighter futures in terms of who are the partnerships that we want to work with and need to work with to help our young people flourish. And what are the brighter futures that we are aiming for? What are those key pledges that we want all of our young people to experience? As I said, some further work around that in the autumn term, but useful for colleagues to just start to think about now. And as I said, I'm hoping that you see the theme of that mission statement and our values all the way through this update. In the Our Trust in Numbers section of the update, I really wanted to just highlight the journey that the Trust has been on in terms of where it started with two schools, Portland and Barbara Priestman, coming together to form a SEND Academies Trust through to where we are now and as we look to the future. And within that, I've just shared how many schools there were, how many school sites, how many colleagues have worked collectively with us, and how many young people we serve. And I think that's really, really important as we take stock of who we are as a trust and what we do in terms of fulfilling our mission statement, that we are really, really in position that we get to work with so many young people across 4 local authority areas now in terms of making their lives brighter. And as a colleague group, that our investment in colleagues and how we serve our colleagues and how colleagues serve our young people is really at the heart as well of everything we do. You'll also see that big growth as we've seen such a demand for specialist places over the last few years. You'll see that although we're 5 schools, soon to be 6 schools, the number of sites that we're operating from has significantly grown from those kind of 2 schools, 2 sites, with a number of our schools operating over multiple sites. And you'll read that further on in the update in relation to further building work and development that's taking place specifically at Barbara Priestman and at Hopewood Academy. So a big piece of work that we have done as an exec team and with heads since January has been really making sure that we got those permanent leadership structures in place and made those permanent appointments. We had temporary arrangements at executive level, and that has cascaded all the way down to middle leadership level. So a big piece of work was really around looking at what's that core model of senior leadership across and within each of our schools, and particularly, as I said in the last couple of slides about our trust in numbers, because a number of our schools are operating over multiple sites where that additional site leadership came in. So you'll see the flow that's in place in terms of head of academy, and because of our provision all being specialist and so much emphasis and importance on the pastoral as well as teaching and learning, you'll see we've got the 2 deputy heads which are mirrored in the assistant heads, and then those schools who have an additional site have an assistant head site leadership. And we've made a distinction between a satellite provision and an additional site, and spent some time looking at what parts of our provision would be a satellite provision, and when would that tip in terms of an additional site. And if anybody wanted any of that detail, then I'm more than happy to share that with you. So as well as the changes to the senior leadership structure and redefining those roles, responsibilities, and that's now moving into middle leadership so that colleagues at middle leadership can be in secure permanent positions by the end of the year, and we can then start afresh going forward. There have also been some changes at local governance tier, if we call it. So we have our members and then our trustees, and that's where all of our decision making goes from a governance trustee aspect. But we did have some local governance arrangements in terms of where we go about seeking assurances about the performance of our schools and how that feeds up to trustee level. So we've made some changes to the local accountability boards, the labs that had previously been in place, and that's really been driven to just separate out some of those key functions that were taking place in local accountability boards, where we had families and we were looking at stakeholder engagement in those meetings, but also sharing and discussing with heads some quite detailed school performance indicators. So we felt that it was best to separate those out. So what we have in place now are academy standards groups, and they're in the calendar just as labs were. And there are 3 parts to those meetings. There's the beginning bit is a seen in practice element where myself and members of the exec team will work with the heads to find out what they've been working on, or whether there were any areas of the any recent quality assurance that needed acted upon swiftly. And we'll use that seen in practice time to really validate the work that's been taking place. And it's also great to also see some other great examples of practice where heads go, actually, this is something that we're working on and has been really successful, or please come and see this. We're in the infancy of implementing this, but we'd love you to see it at this stage. And that's been great. We've across all of the schools, we've seen improved transport arrangements. We've seen outdoor areas where there's been heavy investment. We've seen updates in relation to progress ladders, transitions in schools where that had been a challenge previously. As well as seeing some great examples around continuous provision, best practice in relation to some of those progress ladders. So it's been a really valuable part of the meeting. We then have the formal part of the Academy Standards Group, the ASG, where we look at data for the school, progress on school priorities, as well as any side-by-side data. So for example, attendance data we look at for that school in the different groups, such as statutory school age, sixth form, girls, boys. But we also look at that data side by side with each academy, so we can see where there are pockets of strength or areas to improve. And then the final part of the Academy Standards Group meeting is to have some time with an exec leader and one of the directors of Academy Improvement and the heads in terms of updating the school evaluation or the Academy Improvement Plan. So then in relation to our stakeholders and the wider group of people that we want to work in partnership in a really meaningful way, we are going to be introducing in the autumn term Academy Councils. And the Academy Council are 4 key groups of people who will all come together at 2 points in the year to really get to know the school and see how they can best serve the school. And how the school can then, how heads and leaders can then work with these groups going forward across the year on some really key focus areas. So within the Academy Council, there'll be an advisory group. So there'll be the Young People Advisory Group, a Colleague Advisory Group, a Family Advisory Group, and then a Community Advisory Group. And the community one is really for each school to think about, you know, who are the key people within that local community that should really know the school and could really help the school, but also that the school could work with and help to get to know them. And that's very unique to each of our schools based on their location, the areas that they serve, the communities that they sit within. And the other groups, so the way that this will work is at the beginning of the year, all of the groups will come together, hear from the head in relation to an overview of what kind of the school priorities, what's been working well in the school. And then the groups will each have a designated leader that works with them, but they'll look at some focused areas that that group can really work on to support with that group. So for example, the family advisory group can look at and will look at the family survey responses and receive, review the questions, look at the results and identify just 1 or 2 key areas to really work with school leaders to improve on. And over the course of the year, they'll do that, so that it's leaders working together as opposed to, you know, in our busy lives at schools, sometimes things happen where we receive feedback, we go and put a lot of effort and work into solving some of the challenges that have been raised and then presenting it back, and it might not always be what that stakeholder group wants. So we're hoping that this approach, in terms of really working together, will mean that we are able to solve problems in a much more purposeful way. And then the end of the year will culminate with feedback in relation to the progress that those groups have made, but also some real great success stories of the each of the schools. So the section of the update about Challenge Partners, there's quite a lot of information to read there. It was really really difficult to just pull out some of the key highlights, because each of the schools had absolutely brilliant reports written about them from the Challenge Partner process. I've also included, as well as the information and some just extracts from each of the schools' reports, I've also included just a little bit about what Challenge Partners is, who they are. And they're a great organisation. We lead this hub in the North East and North Yorkshire, which is great because it means we get to work with schools within our trust and beyond the trust. And in fact, you might see that coming through when you read the sections in the early years. So as much as the photographs and the focus of that early years network reflect our schools and our young people, the work that Kirsty Mount has done in leading that has been around all of our Challenge Partner schools that have early years provision. So it's a national organisation, but we also work on a regional hub level model. And as I said, we run the hub for the North. We currently have 11 schools that are all specialist schools working within that, from North Tyneside all the way down to North Yorkshire. So as part of our subscription to Challenge Partners, all of our schools every year have a quality assurance review, which really focuses on leadership and the quality of education. And as I said, I've put some extracts there where it really just shows the great work and celebration of great work from all colleagues. 2 of our schools were also accredited with areas of excellence, and you'll read those in the report as well. They were absolutely fantastic. I know I mentioned early years when I was giving the Challenge Partners update, and this just shows that, about how The early years have come together, colleagues within the early years, to go and visit each other's settings and really share those ideas of best practice and learn from each other, which is what we're about. We're about that purposeful collaborations, a trust. It's one of our core values, and really important that our children who come to our early years provision get an absolutely brilliant start. And as I've mentioned, that extends beyond our schools into our Challenge Partner Hub. So I'm sure you'll enjoy reading about the young people's experience in early years. So there are 3 colleague spotlights throughout this particular update, and I hope you really enjoy reading the story, Jodie, Diane and Kirsty's story about how they've come to be in Ascent and the development opportunities they have had. And I would love to feature more colleagues in each of the termly updates that I'll do. So if you're reading those and think, gosh, I've got my story would be a great story, then I'd really love to hear from you. Please get in touch. So as well as colleagues collaborating, what's been absolutely brilliant and just sheer joy, I've heard this described by a number of colleagues, is the young people who've been able to collaborate. And that's either kind of collaborating school with school, hold trust, as we had the most amazing performance at Rainton Meadows very recently, and those collaborations within schools, so such as the Mowbray Choir, where young people come together from across primary, secondary, across different classrooms, as well as the dance at Portland that takes place on a Thursday afternoon that I always hear about every time I go in, and Hopewoods Choir as well, which got a special mention in their Challenge Partner report. So there's been some absolutely brilliant opportunities for our young people to engage within the whole of the arts, music and performance, and some local performance and wider stage as well. So you'll read about Sadler's Wells and their brilliant performance back earlier on in the spring term. So I'm sure you'll enjoy reading all about the different performances and maybe sparking some ideas in your mind about future collaboration as well, in terms of how we extend that from the arts into other areas. So as well as the work going on in schools and by school colleagues, it's really important that we reflect on the fantastic work that our central service colleagues do in terms of making sure that we're in a position where we can in schools all get on and teach and work with the young people. And a big part of that is around buildings and making sure that the buildings are safe and fit for purpose. And we're really lucky that that's been the case for a number of years, and that Mick Little and Damon Orton have really invested that and have got some great established practice, so that the schools are continually improving. But in fact, Ashtrees, Barber Priestburn, Hopewood and Portland are in a great baseline condition now because of the investment over the years. With Mowbray coming on board and Springwater later in the year, that's where the focus of significant investment is, in terms of bringing those schools, and Mowbray in particularly as being part of Ascent now, in terms of that investment to get the condition of the building to the standard that it needs to be. You'll see in the buildings update there's a range of information about how some key projects taking place in most of the schools over the summer, and that where that key investment's being channeled, and that money's our money. It's part of our budgets, and hopefully you'll see that it's being used effectively. The other aspects of the building update that you'll read is in relation to Barbara Priestman's sixth form moving into another building. So Barbara Priestman's sixth form for a few years has been located within the grounds of Thornhill Academy, which neighbours the school, in fact, in Sunderland, and there's a gate access and a walkway where colleagues and young people can go between the two sites. Thornhill Academy is actually going to be knocked down and a new building's being built there. So Barbara Priestman are relocating to another provision, which is again within another school, a different academy trust, a school called Monk Wearmouth that used to have a sixth form and a great big sixth form building, and that's going to be taken over on a relatively temporary basis. We're not sure for how long. Barbara Priestman's sixth form will move in there. There's a really significant investment in terms of funding going into that project right now and over the summer to make sure that it's ready for our young people and colleagues to move into. So really, really exciting development. It's going to give them much more space and scope to match the provision to young people's needs. And then you'll also read about Hopewood extending across two more sites, Howlett and Cotsford, and how exciting that's going to be in terms of giving, on one site particularly, giving young people an opportunity to mix and be included with colleagues within a mainstream site. So lots of building work and buildings and sites being opened at different times. Again, adding to that number of sites that we'll be working from collectively as Ascent. So a big thank you here to Lucy from Portland, who has been doing a lot of work on the Rainbow Flag Award, as well as I know other schools in the trust have, and this is really around our value of embracing difference and celebrating all. So it's been great to hear how schools have been celebrating Pride Month over the month of June last month. And Lucy and the team at Portland had redeveloped the logo as part of that recognition and celebration for our colleagues and young people. So the final couple of sections on the update that you'll be able to read, but again, just to give some context. You will see we're connected. We have visibility on a number of social media platforms, so LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and Facebook. And we have trust-wide accounts on those, as well as the individual schools having theirs. And on Facebook particularly, we've set up an Ascent Academies Trust Facebook account, which links and promotes the great work that's going on across all of our schools. And it's really lovely to see current colleagues, ex-colleagues, current families, ex-families, and some of our young people as part of their alumni joining up and using that. So it's really great. All of the individual school accounts feed into that. So please do follow them, have like the page and follow them so that you can get a good flavour of the updates going on across the trust. And then the mission moments. This is something we've brought in and we're thinking about in line with our mission. Together we build brighter futures for our young people with SEND, and how we just keep thinking about what the purpose is, why Ascent exists to do those things. So we've introduced them in our meetings and at trustee level. And they are those moments that really resonate in line with our mission statement. And as much as over the 2 terms, there have been so many of these moments for me. When I was reflecting, there were 2 quite standout moments. Way back in January, February time, not long after I'd taken up post, that have just stayed there for me. So the first one was Toby, and this was in conversation with Katie Oliver, head at Mowbray, where she reflected on something that happened, and you'll read his story, but in essence, just how that's exactly that togetherness. So colleagues working together with a young person over time, family, speech and language therapists, and the result of that for that young person having that brighter future, that he's able to make a request of something that he needs to help himself, is just, yeah, it's just what we're about. And then Georgia as well, so a young person at the other end of their spectrum, not in primary but in sixth form, has been so well prepared by the team of colleagues over so many years and all of the wider people working with her. Those opportunities for work-related learning in the cafe, opportunities for work experience, family being part of that ambition for her to be so well prepared that she's now ready to leave and fly, as she gains her opportunity for supported internship with Project Choice. So that's a young person who's leaving us in a much brighter position than she started. So I hope that you found the information useful. For those people who are watching the video, those people reading the materials, I hope that it's given you a really good update in terms of a range of different activities that have taken place across the trust over the spring and summer terms. And like I've said in there, if there are any news stories or anything that you think would be really particularly good to feature and that you as a colleague want to know about and hear about, then please let me know, because I'd love to make sure that the updates are really reflective of what people would like to hear about too.